Hi, this is Marc Elias, founder of Democracy Docket. It is Sunday, July 13th, and this is my weekly update. Boy, what a big week of news on the democracy front. We saw the Department of Justice continue to do the bidding of the Republican Party all over the country. In Minnesota, they asked to access the Minnesota voter rolls. I ask you, what good is possibly going to come from the Republican Pam Bondi Department of Justice accessing these voter rolls in state after state after state? It was Democracy Docket that broke the news about this latest request in Minnesota, and they are covering that throughout the country. But probably the biggest news of the week came from the state of Texas. Now, let's just break this down. Texas redistricted after the 2020 census like every other state, and it engaged in a partisan gerrymander, right? What does that mean? It meant they drew the lines to ensure that Republicans could win the maximum number of seats possible in the congressional delegation, and that has proved to be the case, right? They have, in fact, succeeded in that partisan gerrymander when you look at election results. But as this White House continues to pass legislation and engage in executive actions that are deeply, deeply unpopular, it is now pulled out all the stops and told states like Texas, and first and foremost, the state of Texas, that it needs to do it again. It needs to engage in mid-cycle redistricting. It needs to make its map even more grotesquely gerrymandered. And Governor Abbott has agreed to do that. He has called a special session for the legislature to come back and engage in this gerrymandering project. But let me tell you something. There is a brewing scandal in the state of Texas involving their redistricting. And Democracy Docket is breaking that news day after day after day. And it involves the fact that in order to convince or to facilitate Republicans, give them an excuse to engage in further gerrymandering, to reopen this process, they got a letter from Pam Bondi and Harmeet Dillon at the Department of Justice saying, oh, by the way, you need to engage in a new round of redistricting because your current map violates the law, okay? 4 districts that you've drawn, by the way, all of them held by Democrats, are illegal. And they're illegal because they were drawn based on race. How convenient that that letter arrives at exactly the moment that the White House and the National Republicans in the House want this process to be reopened and to screw over Democrats. Lo and behold, this letter arrives. And Greg Abbott, the governor, says, okay, I guess we have to do this redistricting. Well, guess what? Democracy Docket uncovered testimony that the Republicans have given in litigation in Texas saying, we didn't use race. Well, we drew these maps, we didn't use race. Now, they said that because they were defending a lawsuit by a bunch of lawsuits by pro-democracy groups, by voting right groups, accusing them of violating the Voting Rights Act and the Constitution in the way they drew their current map. So then they were happy to say we didn't use race at all. But that, of course, contradicts this whole theory that the Department of Justice has floated in this letter that has served for the predicate to reopen this. Oh, what a tangle web they have weaved. And we have already seen some of the groups in that first case where this testimony was given file an emergency motion pointing out this discrepancy after Democracy Docket published its story. And we will see where this goes. But look, this is just another one of the best reasons why, if you are not following Democracy Docket on this YouTube channel, you need to do so. Click the little button in front of you. It's free. And more importantly, if you're not subscribed to Democracy Docket, you are missing the essential reading, the essential source of unvarnished, independent, pro-democracy news that covers what's happening in redistricting, in voting rights, in democracy around the country in court. So please take a second and click on the link above or in the description below to become a Democracy Docket subscriber today, either to their free newsletters or to their premium content. All right, that is what's happening in Texas. That's not the only news that we had this week. The Supreme Court may get another chance to weaken the Voting Rights Act with a case out of North Dakota. The Eighth Circuit, which covers North Dakota, has said that there is no private right of action. What that means is that there's no ability by private plaintiffs to challenge state laws that violate the Voting Rights Act. Only the Department of Justice can do this. Look, That ruling is wrong. It is a calamity. If only Pam Bondi can enforce the Voting Rights Act, there will be no enforcement of the Voting Rights Act. I get that. The reason why this is very newsworthy and why there are people who are nervous about this, while there are people who are supporting it, is bringing this Eighth Circuit case to the U.S. Supreme Court, asking them to review it, is a big bet that they will come out the right way. If they come out the wrong way, it could be catastrophic nationwide. We don't know whether the Supreme Court will take this case, but that is a big case that Democracy Docket is following, and you should be as well. Good on the good news front, this week we saw in the state of Florida a federal judge block a part of that state's laws attacking direct democracy involving the ballot initiative process. So that was some good news out of the state of Florida. So look, lots going on. There is nothing that Republicans are more focused on right now after they have passed their terrible bill that strips healthcare from millions of Americans in order to give billionaires a tax break. There is nothing they care about more now than the 2026 midterm elections. And there is no more essential resource to understand all of the fights that are going on than Democracy Docket. All right, what about the week ahead, right? So you're tuned in because you want to know what's coming up, Mark. Tuesday's your big day. So on Tuesday, we've got 3 cases that you have to follow. The first is in the Ninth Circuit, where that Court of Appeals will hear arguments relating to a preliminary injunction that is blocking 2 provisions of the Arizona 2023 election procedure manual. I know what you're thinking. It's 2025. But here's the thing. We saw a half dozen lawsuits filed by Republicans and by their allies to try to block basically what is the rule book, right? The basic operating procedure manual for how elections are held in Arizona. And they tried every theory in state court and in federal court. In this case, they won 2 parts were blocked. The first allows the Secretary of State to conduct a canvass of certified statewide results, even when local election officials refuse to do so. Why is that important? Because after the 2022 election, we actually saw some county officials refuse to certify the election results. That's right. The election deniers were refusing to certify the accurate results. I know you're worried about this. I'm worried about this. I litigate this in my wearing my other hat as a voting rights lawyer. And it was a big concern in 2020, obviously, when Donald Trump tried to do it, a big concern in 2022. And we saw that in some places. And it was a huge concern going into the 2024 election. The only reason why we didn't see it is because Donald Trump won. But this issue has not gone away, and it will be one of the big fights and central focuses as we head towards 2026. So what the Ninth Circuit says about whether or not the Secretary of State can essentially step into the shoes of the local and county election officials to make sure that accurate results are certified will be a huge deal. The second provision prohibits political activity that could intimidate voters inside or outside of 75 feet of a polling location. Yes, you've heard that right. The Republican Party went to court to be able to engage in activity that intimidates voters near polling locations. If you want to know what the modern Republican Party is about, just take this provision and mail it with a stamp to the Republican National Committee and say, we are on to you. All right. So that's what's going to be going on in the Ninth Circuit in the Arizona case. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, there is a hearing scheduled over a lawsuit challenging provisions of SB 747, which was a big voter suppression law passed last year. It altered the voter registration process for same-day registrants. The state defendants argue that the remaining claims are now moot due to a settlement that they entered into involving the state rejecting ballots after just one undeliverable notice was sent. That was a lawsuit that my law firm was involved in and others, but there are plaintiffs who are still pressing these claims. We will see whether those claims still have any force and validity or whether the settlement has ended that. But, Republicans are up to no good in North Carolina, so we are likely to learn a lot about what their plans are in the course of this hearing. The Department of Justice is right now just an arm of the vast right-wing voter suppression war machine. They are just doing the bidding of what the RNC and Donald Trump and House Republicans and Senate Republicans and election deniers around the country want. That's it. And so we cannot expect the Department of Justice to do good things. We can't even expect them to do nothing, right, and just sit on the sidelines. They are active participants now in the efforts by Republicans to undermine free and fair elections in 2026. But here's the deal. We are fighting back. You are fighting back. We are not going to take this for granted that they are going to succeed. In fact, we're going to insist that they not. And the way we do that is, number one, we fight them in court. And that's something that I and my law firm do every single day. Number two, we stay informed. And that is the work of Democracy Docket. And number three, we are present. We speak out. We call our elected officials. We show up at public hearings. We show up at protests. We post on social media that we will not allow this country to go through the 2026 midterm elections and not have free and fair elections. So we all have to do our part, and that includes you. And like I said, that starts with becoming informed, and then it moves forward with taking peaceful advocacy. The best way to stay informed, make sure you're subscribed to Democracy Docket and get good, accurate, pro-democracy, not corporate, paid for, not bending a knee to Donald Trump news, information, analysis. Those links are all in the description below. And it is more important now than ever before to stay informed. Thanks. I will see you next time.